And Kevin for joining us today's session. I'm James Clayton. I work as a project manager for Winning Pitch and ultimately responsible for bringing some of the content like today to the Access to Finance program. So today's session's around mindset and the mindset of a high growth leader. Before I hand over to Steve and we get started on the presentation, just want to kind of give you an overview of the Finance for Growth scheme. If you don't already know, it's a program of support that's available to SMEs across the Humber region, really to kind of help educate and also overcome some of the barriers to receiving finance. There is one-to-one support that's available through the Growth Hub themselves, and there are a number of investment business advisors. There is a grant pot as well of £1,000 to £5,000 depending on the project spend, and as I understand, that can be used for a variety of different services and consultancy. And in addition to that, as mentioned, we've been commissioned to deliver the workshop program. Next slide, Steve. Just to give you a little bit of the housekeeping, numbers are quite low, so I'm going to say that, just if we have any questions, let's keep it as interactive as possible. We are going to have some natural breaks just to kind of just to allow for Q&A and whatnot. You will be receiving the slide deck from today's presentation. You'll get it in a PDF format, but you'll also get the recording, so you can come back to it at any point of reference. And if you have any questions, feel free to just ping Steve or I an email. We will send a sign-in sheet and feedback form. It'd be really good to just get your feedback from the session. We're always looking to ways of improving it. And it just helps us plan and make changes for the future as well. So I think that's all the housekeeping done. I'm going to hand over to Steve for the main event.
All righty. Thank you, James. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for attending. Really appreciate it. My name's Steve Young. I'm director with Winning Pitch, and talking today about thinking, which is a bit of an odd topic, I suppose, in terms of compared to most of the webinar topics. But for me at the moment, thinking is the most important thing. At the moment, we've all got big decisions to make. We've got decisions around the growth of our businesses in relation to COVID. We've got decisions around maybe raising finance. We've got big decisions to make around the staff. And some of those big decisions require good thinking. They've got to be based on solid thinking. Because you guys and me, where I'm a director, you're directors and business owners like me. If we can get our thinking right at the moment and make the right decisions, it will make all the difference. If we get our thinking wrong and we make some bad decisions on those sort of topics, it will be a calamity. So how we think at the moment as directors, as leaders, as owners of businesses is absolutely crucial. If not only in terms of the short term, but also the long term. And that's why we thought about today was about the quality of your thinking. Not doesn't just drive the quality and the growth of your business, but it almost, if you get some of those big decisions wrong, it can really impact on your whole destiny. Big news. So what I thought I'd do is say, well, why listen to me? Okay, so as I say, my name's Steve. I'm a director with Winning Pitch. We've only got a small group today, but a little bit of background to me in terms of what we've done. Winning Pitch, we're a high growth business ourselves. So we went from 0 to about 11, 12 million in about 11 years. 0 to about 130 staff. A couple of years ago, we raised £2.5 million investment to bring on a training team. We lost a major contract and now we're building back up again. So I feel I've been through the mill a little bit in terms of our organisation's growth. Certainly wasn't the straight line that we drew on the business plan, that's for sure. So where are we now? Well, we now that because we help small businesses grow faster and some big businesses as well, We've now probably worked with about 13,000 growth firms and leaders. And during that time, what that's allowed us to do is start to think about what makes them different. So the bottom line is that in any region or in any area or any particular data set of businesses, usually if it's randomly taken, there's usually about somewhere between 8% to 6% of high growth firms. So those are ones that are maybe, I guess, increasing turnover 20% year on year or doubling or those sort of things, high growth. And there's probably a couple of percent that have got the potential as well. But ultimately, we're looking at about 85% of the businesses that are in a region don't grow. So what's interesting to me is, what is it that those 15% of business leaders and owners are doing differently to those 85% of business owners that are working really, really hard and are putting in the hours and are doing everything they can do, but they're not getting the same results as more successful ones? So what is it those successful ones are doing differently? So this is what we did, and we've done a number of studies here. We're currently just finishing a PhD into supporting high growth firms. We're getting some good research and knowledge out of that. We did a study with University of Salford and some with Manchester around the mindset of high growth. And we've really tried to draw some really interesting things from that. And I think the key thing from me that's coming through those pieces of research that we sort of knew already was that it wasn't to do with IQ, the business leader's IQ. It wasn't necessarily to do with the money. It was actually most of the difference that made the winning difference was actually in the mindset or in the way that the successful business owners thought. Their thinking was different to those other people. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, a couple of things around that. So when we talk about it, one of the words and phrases that came out of this research was that the inner game was often more important than the outer game. What's going on in your head or other business owners' head, the beliefs you've got, the decisions you make, the way you think about things is in some ways more important because it drives everything else. And a phrase that we use quite a lot is that the growth and success of your business can never outrun the quality of thinking you put into it. So the growth and success of your business will never outrun the quality of thinking you put into it. So how much time are you thinking about your business and the business growth? How much time are you putting into you self-developing yourself, the way that you think? So mindset, thinking, absolutely essential. So I thought what I'd do is to start this morning. And again, we've only got a very small group today, so that's absolutely fine. But I would say that the tools and techniques you're going to learn today really unlock the power of those through participation. So what I'd like to do is participate in these exercises we're going to do. Some of them, maybe you might feel are a bit confidential or you might feel a bit personal. So if you don't want to share using the text, that's fine. But I would ask you participate. You'll get more from the next hour if you participate. Maybe just in a pad of paper in front of you, that's fine. But just do it. Answer the questions, do the exercises, and that'll unlock more value out of the next hour. Okay, what I'm going to do is start with a bit of a sort of a check, if you like, on where your head is at the moment. So the mood that you're in at the moment. So what I'd like to do is, maybe just this once, certainly, is go into the text area. And what I'd like to do is give yourself a score between 0 and 20, where on your mood right now. So if 0 is deeply depressed and negative, and 20 is absolutely euphoric and totally energized, just give yourself a number. Give me some numbers. Give me a number between 0 and 20 as to how you're feeling at the moment. What's your level? What's your mood at the moment? So just see if we can drop a number in there. That's all. And you can join as well, James, if you like.
Yeah, I've joined in. I've said, no, I'm at a 14. I'm quite positive.
I'm loving it. Yeah, exactly.
We've got a few lower scores. We've got a 5 and an 8, but we've also got some 14s. We've got 15 and a 12. So a bit of a mix, you know.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're seeing at the moment. Is that You know, there are some serious issues at the moment, and people really are struggling and being challenged by what they need to think about and how they can think about it and things like that. So what I would say for those people who scored maybe less than 10 is what we want to try and do is try and lift that mood if we can. So we want to be positive. I'm choosing the mood. I'm going to go realistically optimistic is the mood I'm going to choose. So I'm going to give myself 15, 16. What I want you to do is try and think about that, because we do know that if, for example, you were deeply depressed or very tired or negative, the power and the state that you put yourself in really impacts on the quality and the output you're going to get from today. So let's try and choose. It's our decision, after all, what mood we want to be in. Let's try and bump that up to over 10, over 15. So just a good way of taking a dip test at the start. Let's see maybe what it's like at the end. So 2 parts for today. We have 2 parts this webinar. The first part, what I'm going to do is share with you success leaves clues. The best way to learn anything, whether it's tennis, whether it's business studies, whatever it might be, it is to model success. It's to look and listen and watch those people who are really successful at it. And what we know about growing a business, particularly the subsets within that, like ramping up for productivity or winning more customers or raising finance. One of the best ways of learning is model what's worked for the most successful people. So what I'm going to do is share with you 3 ways that the world's most successful business owners think differently to everybody else. Second part is about evaluation, how we think and how we evaluate situations to come to a decision. So I'm going to give you 5 practical sort of concepts that you need to be aware of when evaluating your situation and making big decisions. And I'll do that through a story, through Sarah's story, which was a lady that I worked with recently. So what I'd like to do is maybe take a moment just to reflect on why you're attending today's sort of Mind Gym webinar. It's very, very practical. You must have had some motivation. I'm sure you've got loads of things you can do, but you obviously chose to come today. So maybe just for yourself, and you don't necessarily have to share this with the group, but just have a think about what is it that's frustrating you about the way you're currently thinking that you may want to change? What is it about your thinking that you might want to change? And or in what new or better way would you like to think? Moving from what to what? So I'd like to be thinking in the COVID situation, I'd like to be thinking less about being fearful and more about growth attitude. Maybe it's a case of I'd like to be thinking, I'd like to be less negative and I'd like to be more positive. Or, you know, maybe it's about what I'd like to do is to think, instead of thinking that I can't do something, that I can do something. So I just wanted just to think internally about those sort of questions. Why are you here? What motivated you to join? And hopefully we can try and test that. So first part, success leaves clues. 3 ways the world's most successful business owners think differently to everyone else. So these are the 3 ways. First of all, they think deductively and inductively. So these are 2 different ways of thinking. The second thing is that they recognize mindset cause and effect. So cause and effect is working in your mind right now. They recognize that. And the third area is they believe they are the creator of all their outcomes and they think big, etc. Now, notice I've not said IQ or intelligence. That's not necessarily the most important thing about their thinking. And somebody said to me on a webinar last week, well, I'm not Richard Branson. I'm not that intelligent. Well, as it turns out, Richard Branson is very badly dyslexic. He had a terrible time at school. And his headmaster thought he'd be in prison. He wouldn't be a success. He wasn't intelligent, apparently, but he's done pretty well for himself in terms of a growth business. So actually, what we find is that it's more emotional intelligence that drives success, much, much more than some empty suit with an MBA, to be brutally honest. It's not actually money either. You don't necessarily need lots of investment. I know quite a lot of businesses that have got investment over the last few months and frankly don't know what to do with it. So that's not the answer either. It's these things. They think deductively and inductively. They recognize mindset, and they believe they're the creator of all their outcomes. So let's just go on the first one of those. What am I talking about in terms of deductively and inductively? Crikey. So what I'm talking about here is that thinking isn't just mental activity. I mean, if you went to the sort of same school or education that I had, what you actually do is thinking. Are you good at thinking? Are you intelligent? At school, we were taught to think in a very, very fixed way. We were taught to, I guess, ingest or take in facts about something and then spit them back out at an examination. And if we manage to remember them and then write them down, then suddenly we are thinking well and suddenly we're intelligent. That's one way, a very limited way of actually measuring thinking. But interestingly, many of us are still in that sort of tram track. We can't get out of that. That's the way we think. So a lot of us do most of our thinking deductively, outside in. So we comprehend the facts that we're told, the ideas maybe that we're told, the issues we're told. And then we're programmed habitually to go back and ask for more information. Now that's fine. Some of that thinking is fine. But, you know, to be honest, if I spoon feed my clients, the only thing that they learn is the width of the spoon. What I need to do and what I found with successful business owners is inductive thinking. So this is much more deeper thinking. This is thinking from the inside out, drawing up from the untapped potential you've got within you. And I use that word very deliberately. Untapped potential. You know, let's be honest, your business hasn't got any opportunity, hasn't got any potential, I don't think. Your market hasn't got any potential. It's got opportunity, and your business has got opportunity. But if you're going to grow, to me, you've got to, what we're talking about is potential, untapped potential that you can leverage. I think potential only resides in people. And for a business owner and a business leader, that potential is you. So if we're going to draw up untapped potential from you, we've got to get you to think inductively from inside out, through self-awareness, through emotional thinking, and really giving us more, I guess, more empowerment to act. After all, if you've come up with the idea and thought about it more, you're far more likely to enact it than someone who's just told you to do something. But we need both sorts to realize the potential. And that's why many of the high growth business leaders and successful owners I know have at least one coach, maybe a mentor. They go to peer to drive this inductive thinking, to ask the difficult questions. So let's have a think about this. We'll have a quick exercise. So hopefully, as I say, do participate. If you want to share, that's great. If you don't, that's also great, but do participate. So let's get a pad and paper ready. First one exercise I want you to think about is what do you truly believe about your potential? So again, not a normal question, but what do you truly believe about your potential? And don't give me the answer that you think I want to hear. Give me the answer that's inside you, deep inside you, in your gut, not the model answer that you think you should write down. And the second one, given your growth depends almost entirely on your potential, what sort of weekly activities could you or should you do more of to tap into that latent potential? So what are you doing? If we think your growth is totally around your own untapped potential, what do you do every week to try and tap into it? Do you go to peer-to-peer groups, or do you meet with a coach, or are you just, like a lot of small business owners, very, very busy? And we work in the business, not on the business, and all that sort of stuff. I know it's the same. We're very, very busy at the moment. It's really easy, but yeah, we got to focus on ourselves. So I don't know, in terms of James, I don't suppose we've got a small group today, so we probably won't have many, because it's quite a personal question as well. We got any responses at all?
Nothing's coming on the chat. I don't know if anyone wants to unmute and ask any questions or share their views. We've had one in all honesty, quite limited potential. to increase potential, I work with other groups and establishments. So.
Yeah, interesting. So that's an interesting one in terms of limited potential, because I actually think that every human has almost unlimited potential within them. They could do, we look at what some humans are doing at the moment, and it's unbelievable. I think what's the challenge is the belief system that sits inside their head that says they can't do it. But inside, I think they've almost got unlimited potential.
Can I say something, Steve?
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah. No, I think, well, I mean, I'm here to sort of to see how I can grow my business. And my guess is that everyone here on this webinar is actually does believe they've got some potential, otherwise they wouldn't be here. But they might not think that. But no, I do think that your self-belief and is really important in any business, because I think part of running a small business is the resilience to keep going, and sometimes keeping going through those hard times, especially at the minute, and especially some sectors. I think it's tough, but it's the mindset to keep going. But I think really it's the mindset, not just keep banging your head against a brick wall and hoping the wall breaks down. It's, is there a better way of getting around the wall? And I think that's really maybe what people find difficulty with.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think what we'll talk about in a minute is habits. And what we find is that people, and there's a lot of research around this saying that, people, and this is why COVID made a massive difference to a lot of people, because it threw them out of all their habits. But before COVID, people were talking that even businesses that were growing reasonably fast was maybe the business owner, the business leader, was maybe spending about 60 to 70% of their time habitually doing and thinking the same way about the same topics, not getting out of that way of thinking. And like you say, a little bit like banging your head against the wall. So if we're going to get a different result, we need to change the cause and effect of that. So I think it's a very valid point you raised there. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the learning from that exercise for me, is that successful and unsuccessful people don't vary greatly in their abilities, but they do vary massively in their desires to reach their potential. So they really will put the resilience in, but they really will try harder. They'll do whatever it takes to reach their potential, because they know if they think it's unlimited, they're going to go all the way for it. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting fact out of some of the research we found. The second area that I think the world's successful business leaders think differently to everyone else is to do with the mindset around cause and effect. So many of you might be aware of cause and effect. Maybe in manufacturing processes use it a lot. In effect, it's saying that if we want to get this effect or a result, we have to work on the causes that make it happen. So you work on a number of causes to get the effect. So if you want to influence the effect, you work on the cause. I'm reminded of a story about a chap on a desert island. He got shipwrecked there. He'd been there for a few weeks. And the one thing to think about this guy, though, although he doesn't maybe look it, is that he was a believer. He believed in his God, and he believed fervently that his God would save him and he wouldn't die. He had belief. So 2 weeks of being on the island, he was getting a little bit worried. And then suddenly on the horizon, a big battleship arrived on the horizon, and somebody threw out a boat, a little rowing boat, and he rowed about halfway towards him, and he shouted, "Swim out to the boat and we'll save you." And the man on the island shook his head and said, no, my God will save me. So the ship disappeared and never seen again. Week after that, the sky was full of a large helicopter going down and down, getting very close. And suddenly there was a rope ladder that was thrown out to him, and somebody shouted out, "Get on the rope ladder, we'll save you." And he shouted back again, no, my God will save me, don't worry about that. The helicopter disappeared. And then a few days later, you wouldn't believe it, but a whale appeared just off the island. And he swore he could see it actually wave its little fin as if to beckon him to jump on his back and he'd swim into safety. And again, the man shook his head and said, no, my God will save me. I believe my God will save me. He had belief. Unfortunately, about a week later, the man died. So He goes to heaven. He's at the pearly gates and he sees God there. And the man is quite annoyed and frustrated, really. He says, to be honest, God, I'm a bit hacked off. He said, I thought that you would save me and you'd let me die. And God says, you know, you're hacked off. He said, I sent you a battleship, I sent you a helicopter and a whale, and you still didn't decide to save yourself. I guess the reason for telling that quite cheesy story is really about the fact that results are driven by actions and behaviours. Actions and behaviours are driven by beliefs. If we get the right beliefs, they'll drive the right actions and behaviours to get the results. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. So cause is, for me, why is this important? Well, everything starts in the mind for me. So whether it's you sat there right now looking at me thinking about raising finance, or you thinking about what you need to do to grow your business in COVID, or the strategy for dealing with a problem employee, or whatever it might be, everything, all that strategy stuff, the tactics, how you're going to do it, all that starts in your mind. That's where you start thinking, okay, I need to do this. I'm going to do it this way. Can I do it that way? I'm not sure. It all starts in the mind, and that's the cause. Now, to improve any effect, you have and must influence that. So the effect, the result you want, if you like. So even the point of like saying, how much do you want to grow your business? Do you want a £20 million business? Do you want a £10 million business? When you're sort of deciding and creating a strategy, that's the result you're after. So what drives that result? Well, it's your actions and it's your behaviors. Okay. So what drives my actions and behaviors and decisions? It's quite a bit more difficult, that. But the interesting thing for me is that if you can't answer that, then straight away, you're going to be struggling to get your results. If you can't think about what drives your actions and behaviors. Well, obviously they're delivered through your body, I suppose, but in essence, everybody's actions and behaviors and decisions, for me, are all driven by the mind. That's where it all starts. And the intelligent bit, the intellect bit, the thinking about the numbers bit is all done in the conscious mind. The prefrontal lobes at the top are the most recently developed part of the brain. But the most powerful for many of us is actually the unconscious mind. And that's where our emotions lie. That's where our belief systems are. That's where our habits are, where we habitually think about a topic and we habitually spit out the answer. The belief systems, I mean, when we talk about belief systems, I suppose what we've got to think about is that a belief system is a feeling of certainty that what something means. So you really believe this is what it means. And that might be something about you. That might be something about how you think about your intelligence, how you feel about taking a chance and what might happen if you do that. So what we've got to do is think about those belief systems as really powerful. They do change people's behaviors. I was listening to a story recently where a psychology story where it was about Carly Simon, who was a female singer back in the 1970s, and Bruce Springsteen. And what was interesting to me about the way the brain was working, how it affected the behaviors, the belief systems were massively important. So Carly Simon was getting a lot of stage fright. There'd been many times when she'd been in concert and she actually couldn't go on because she was so frightened with stage fright. She wouldn't go on. She was petrified. And the interviewer said, what happens? And she said, well, sort of about 10 minutes to go before I go on stage, I start to sweat a lot. I start to shake. I feel a bit sick. And then I know I can't go on. Then I know I've got stage fright. And then I make the decision to cancel the gig. And they compared that to Bruce Springsteen. And they said, what happens 10 minutes before you go on, Bruce? And he said something very similar. He said, well, 10 minutes beforehand, I start to sweat. And then I also start to shake a little bit. And then also I feel a bit sick. And interesting though, he said, and then I know I'm ready. Same actions and behaviors, totally different belief system, different result. So we've got to think about that way that belief system works for you. We'll do that in a second. As we've said, a lot of us are acting on autopilot. I think it's also worthwhile at this stage when we talk about thinking about your growth business, your growth strategy. You know, I was talking to somebody only recently and they said, look, let's be realistic who I am. I'm what I'm capable of. Because I've challenged her, say, well, why is it only a £5 million business? Why not a £20 million business or a £50 million business? What's stopping you? And she said, well, it's just got to be realistic about who I am, what I'm capable of. I'm not intelligent enough. I haven't got the right contacts. I haven't got enough money to do that sort of size of business. And then I guess in that moment, what I knew was the fact that it didn't matter what strategic tool or technique I was going to show her. Actually, if she really believed that we weren't going to get the growth, then there's kind of no point really, because of the fact that that belief system, she might intellectually grasp what I'm saying, but she's not going to execute it. Why would she? She doesn't believe that it's possible. So belief systems, very, very powerful. You think about decisions you make, and I'll tell you now, they've got ancestry in your belief systems. So let's have a think. Self-limiting beliefs exercise. So as I say, those businesses that are going to grow even in COVID, and there are many businesses that are growing in COVID, for me, it's not so much about the business. It's more about the belief system of the owner or the leader who's driving that business. And whether they're self-limiting or whether they're empowering. So again, you don't necessarily need to share this with us, but maybe on jotting down a piece of paper, identify a self-limiting belief that has produced unwanted or negative consequences in your life. Think about a belief system. And again, don't tell me the obvious things that you think I want to know or you want to know. Really think about it. Have you got a particular belief system, a particular belief that's maybe held you back? And why haven't you got a global empire of businesses? What is it that's stopping you? What is it stopping you that's stopping you from being one of the most successful business people during this crisis? You know, earlier we did this webinar earlier and somebody said, well, yeah, but one of the things that came out that somebody talked in the text box was actually about fear. The fear of having a successful business and being out of control, not spending time with their kids. Or somebody else said the cash getting out of control. What is the belief system that's stopping you from really massively accelerating your growth? So James, did we have any, I don't know whether we have any comments through, but were there any others that we got on when we've run this webinar that typical sort of ones that come out here, do you think?
I think you mentioned them, is that, you know, around kind of losing potentially the control of the business, making sure that it is still a sustainable business. We did have a few comments from the previous section that about kind of growth potential of individuals.
Okay.
So I'll mention those, and then maybe I'll throw the question back at you, Steve. You know, because you're there's a belief there's a huge potential, but you know, not really recognised or realised yet. And then another comment was around kind of mindset of people, and you know, believing that you've got the growth potential, but it's controlled by other people. You know, you're the mindset, and 99% of them not understanding what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think it's a big thing. I think, you know, one of the limiting beliefs that I think we all have is one of fear of failure. And I think, you know, and you know, that's a key one for everybody. But it's a self-limiting belief. But at the same time, you know, it's one of the ones that gets me up at 5 o'clock in the morning and gets me at it. So, but you've got to be, I guess, one of the things with self-limiting beliefs for me is the fact that, you know, it's about awareness. You know, I think possibly one of the biggest things that leaders have, the best things that some leaders have is self-awareness, is realizing why you make that decision or why you took that action is the fact that it's sponsored by a self-limiting belief often, and trying to be aware of that, take that into consideration.
We have had one come in now about charisma, maybe a lack of it,
Yeah.
I'm working with
Yeah, thanks for that. No, thanks. I think that's a very honest one. And I think, again, what we'll do later on is we're going to talk a little bit. I'll show you how we started to trying to change some of these self-limiting behaviours and self-limiting beliefs with a lady I worked with. But yeah, I think everybody's got the charisma, everybody's got the confidence. It's just a case of getting the right references and looking at how we put that forward, and also maybe challenging where you got that limiting belief from. So I know certainly some of my old limiting beliefs, and certainly some of my clients, they've got from their parents. Somebody in authority that told them something and they've held that. But maybe they told them that when they were 16, but it's still directing their lives now when they're 54. It seems crazy, but that's how some of these things work in the unconscious.
Steve, do you think a lot of it is, I suppose, from school days or sort of the early professional careers, maybe, having to ask permission to do stuff, and it's almost like a self-limiting thing?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think certainly a lot of the beliefs a lot of the limiting beliefs I've worked with leaders are often set maybe under 20 years old. And it's often a person who's perhaps had authority. So it could have been a teacher, or it could have been a parent, or, I mean, I'm sure they were well-meaning at the time when they said whatever it was they said, but that's really stayed with a lot of people. And like you say, permission is an interesting one in terms of, you have to get someone's approval first before you do something, particularly something big like, growing a business or something exciting like that. Yeah, good. Okay, so let's move on to the third area. I think one of the other ways that we talked about was seeing big. So our founder of Winning Pitch, John, he thinks much bigger than me. So when we talk about a business opportunity, he almost like times 100, times 1,000. It's crazy, but that's the way it is. He thinks really big. And I think from our point of view, what he sees is potential. So how growth business and investors are what they're looking for is this word again, potential. You and a potential investor, what they're looking for is that if you've got the potential there to grow, are you worth a bet that you're at this level at the moment, but you've got the potential to grow to this level? That potential. And a bit like when you see some of these house programs where they're doing up a house or they're designing a house, one person will go into the house and they'll look around and go, well, I don't like the decor, and the wallpaper's not very nice here, and it's a bit chintzy over there, and the garden's a bit bare, there's nothing in the garden. Oh, it's no good, this, I can't, well, it's too small, these 2 rooms are too small. And then you get this more successful people who walk in there and they just see the potential. They walk into the garden and go, I'm not just seeing an empty garden here. This is like a blank canvas for me. I'm seeing a hot tub there with my wife having a G&T. I'm seeing the nice flowers there. I walk into the kitchen and I've knocked the kitchen into the dining room, and I can see an island there with my kids around having breakfast, and everybody's loving it. And upstairs, they see potential. And that's what you've got to see in your business, and investors have got to see in your business as well. So one of the ways that we do that in a business plan, going from something quite surreal to something quite practical, you might have come across TAM, SAM, and SOM. So these are little phrases that some investors use and we use with ours to start to help business leaders and owners think about the real potential of their business. So let me just give you a minute on TAM, SAM, SOM, because it sounds very odd. So let me start off by saying this is a way of, in the 3 circles, what you tend to do is write the market value for your business. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're going to start a vegan takeaway business. So a bit like McDonald's, but let's say it's vegan for the sake of argument. So we'll start with the outer circle, the TAM, the total available market. So if we wanted to think big, we'd go, well, look at McDonald's, what they've done with, their product. Maybe we could do, maybe not quite as big, but we could do something around the world with our vegan burgers and takeaway. So let's just think about that. So the total addressable market for that might be, let's just say, £1 billion globally. Okay. Then we go down one step to the serviceable addressable market. So this is really, I guess, the sort of segment of the market, the proportion of the TAM that we could achieve realistically. Maybe it's within our geographical reach. So we might say, for the sake of argument, we might define our SAM number as maybe the UK, or maybe UK and France. So that if it was $1 billion for our TAM, let's just say it might be $500 million for our SAM. And then we go down to our SOM, our serviceable obtainable market. And this is the portion of the SAM that you could capture within the next, say, 12, 18 months, 2 years. So it might be a case of saying, okay, so maybe if we're starting off today from day one, the SOM might be a couple of million, and it could be the Humber region and maybe Yorkshire region that we're going to actually penetrate and dominate. So what we can do there by doing this little diagram is actually start to show to investors, or show to ourselves, that actually, you know, the potential is not just £500,000. The potential, if we wanted to, is actually to take it global. And if we had the right model, if we had the right investment, if we had the right people, we can stand a chance. That's the size of the prize if we wanted to go for the whole amount. And how fast we move from our SOM and do it, how far much we succeed in achieving our SAM and then our TAM, the speed of that. So going from SOM to SAM for an investor is really interesting, because that means that, you know, you're on a certain run rate, and maybe the total addressable available market is maybe not such a pipe dream after all. So thinking big. So next time you're thinking about your business and your market, etc., what I'd urge you to do is think big, but think potential. So that finishes off the first part of today's session, which was around thinking. It was around inductive and deductive thinking. It was around cause and effect on the mindset. And the third area we talked about there was really about just thinking about potential and seeing potential. You've got to see the potential. And then you've got to be able to, if you're going for funding as an example, you've got to be able to describe that growth to maybe a potential funder, or maybe someone in your team, or someone you're trying to recruit. You've got to tell that growth story in a way that's, I guess, confident, that's got conviction, but it's got clarity as well. So that's the thinking part, and those are sort of some of the things we saw in the fast growth leaders. So the second part of this webinar is about evaluating situations and making the best decision. So I see a lot of business leaders at the moment looking at decisions. You know, should I invest in this new product that I need to do? Should I really go for the digital marketing to try and grow more new customers? Should I ramp up my capacity even though COVID might affect it? Should I get investment to grow the business? Should I have a difficult decision with an employee? All these are difficult decisions to do, and big decisions. And as I said at the start, I think particularly in the current climate, there's more bigger decisions. And if you get them right, you're the star player. And if you get them wrong, then they go badly wrong. So what we need to do is think about, I guess, how we evaluate situations and make best decisions. After all, take your biggest competitor, your best competitor, the one that's doing quite well in your industry. All they've done is evaluated a situation and maybe come to some different decisions than you. But how have they made those decisions, and what have they gone through in their thinking to get to a better decision? So I think there's kind of 5 things here, and I'll just quickly go through those. But so I used all these 5 things with a lady I was dealing with who had a business that was in event management, and this is probably about, to be honest, probably about 3 months ago now. She was called Sarah, and she owned and ran an event management company. And when COVID hit badly, she rang me up and we had a Zoom call. And I remember her saying to me, you know, this COVID thing is not only killing my business, I'm gonna have to make my staff redundant, but also it's killing me as well. And at that particular point in the Zoom, Sarah started to cry, because what she thought her only option was to actually close the business down, a business that she worked pretty hard to build up. So part of my role was really to help her with her thinking, rather than just going, oh, we'll just close it down. What other options did we have? And so part of the role of that Zoom call was really to get her to think about pivoting to a different way. So, for example, instead of having mass events, maybe have digital events or online events. There were ways of pivoting that business. It didn't have to die overnight. So what I did was, before I started to think about the strategy, before I started to think about getting a plan together, I knew I was going to have to work on her as a person. So first thing we did, and as I say, she was pretty upset at the time. The first thing we did was to look at her state. So we all know that in terms of making decisions or evaluating situations, the outcome of that will vary enormously depending on what state you're in. So let's play a bit of a game here. What I want you to do is to get yourself in a depressed, tired state. So I want you to sort of lean back in your chair. I want you to drop your shoulders. I want you to slow down your breathing. Think about what a terrible situation we're all in at the moment. And it's another 6 months. Oh, no, will we ever? Oh, woe is us. And then try and make a good big decision. It's really difficult because you think, what's the point? What I want you to do now is get back out of that physiology I've just put you in. So back in the chair. Let's get stiff up there in terms of erect, in terms of our physiology, our pattern. Let's get our breathing back up there. We know our physiology affects how we make decisions. The second thing is our focus. When I was talking to Sarah, all the time, when I was talking to her at the start, her focus was all about COVID, about the spread, about how it's going to impact that, about this, about COVID, about that, about this, about the government, about that. And I said, Sarah, let's talk about the things you can control. With the greatest respect, you can't control the government, and bitching about it isn't going to help us right now. You can't control COVID, so let's park that. What can you control? And she said, well, it's very difficult. The COVID's, I said, okay, I know it's difficult. What can you control? Think. We're going to try and save this business. We're trying to repivot this business. What can you control? Oh, well, I suppose I could ring up some of my best clients and see if they'd be interested. Brilliant. What else? Well, I suppose I could maybe look at what Zoom looks like, and could I even do it? Great. What else? So we start to focus on the things we can control, not the things we can't control. And then the final one is emotion. You know, I believe, and as you said at the start of this webinar, you know, we all pick our emotion. And that's why it's interesting to see what people are being when they come on webinars like this. If they are being, you know, depressed and tired and negative, that's your choice. Just as it is for those people who are going to say, I'm going to really try and get something from this. Otherwise, it's a waste of my time. I'm really going to try and pick a couple of nuggets from it. Choosing your emotions. So, you know, it is our choice, I believe, apart from a very small few percentage. If you've got, you know, actual clinical depression, then you need to see professional help. But for 95% of us, you know, we can choose our emotion. And that's what I did to Sarah. So with the physiology, to stop her from crying, one of the things I said was like, let's try and stop the crying. And what I want you to do, Sarah, is go and run up and down the stairs a few times because we know emotion drives emotion. And to reframe the whole physiology, her focus, her emotion. So that's what we did there, to try and get in a better state rather than in a state. The second thing I did with Sarah then was to say to her, Sarah, tell me what questions are going through your head at the moment. And she said, what do you mean? So I said, well, tell me what are the questions that you're thinking about at the moment? And she said, well, I guess I'm thinking, what will happen if I don't get, my business doesn't make any money? What will I do? Where will I live when we have to sell the house? It's like, wow, okay. What else are you thinking? Well, why is it always me? Why does this happen to me? This failure. What I was saying to her was, how are you getting on with those answers? It sounds like to me, if you're asking yourself those questions, the answers you're going to get aren't going to be great. So again, let's change the questions. What we want to do is change the questions for good questions. So another good example I was reading an interview with someone who had been involved in a horrible car accident. Unfortunately, part of the damage that the guy did to himself, he lost both his legs. And he said for the first few weeks in hospital bed, the question he was asking himself was, why me? And he really tortured himself around it. What happened, and long story short, is that actually he was able to talk to a counsellor who managed to ask him different questions. So the question that he ended up asking himself was, how can I turn this negative into a positive for the community? So he ended up doing some absolutely brilliant things online with regard to reducing the speed that cars were doing down a particular road in his hometown. And also he's now doing a campaign that stops cars parking on the pavement or parking on the pavement for people in wheelchairs that can't get past. He's been a tremendous, powerful voice in the community that actually would never have happened without the accident. So for me, the quality of a person's life is always in direct proportion to the quality of questions they are willing to ask themselves or be asked by another. And this is where the coach comes in, because a lot of the successful business leaders I see all have a good coach, maybe a mentor as well, but maybe a couple of coaches. But they're there to ask difficult questions, challenging questions. They're not there to tell them what to do. They're already relatively successful business people in their own right, so they're not. But they are there to ask them inductive type questions. So the third one, we'll get into another little quick exercise on this one. It is, I want you to think about, and this was the same with Sarah, when I was talking to Sarah about pivoting, saying, what do you think you should pivot then? You know, should we move the business model? What do you think? Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it'll work. I'm not sure it's the right decision. I can't make the decision. And what Sarah was doing, which is what a lot of us do, is procrastinate. And we procrastinate because we're associating pain and pleasure. It's like a balance, like a scales, if you like, in our mind, probably in our subconscious mind. But when we can't make a decision, or we won't have that difficult conversation with that employee, or we won't have that challenging conversation with a difficult client, or where there's sort of I guess, a jeopardy there. It's a balancing act in our heads of how much pain am I going to get from this and how much pleasure. And often to drive behavior, we need to alter that balance in our heads. So whenever we've got something we're thinking about, what we've got to do is to associate that not changing, not making the decision, not growing the business, not going for investment, whatever it is equal to massive, immediate, unbearable amounts of pain. And changing is equal to massive, extraordinary, immediate amounts of pleasure. We've got to start associating that. So if I say for the sake of argument, well, I was thinking about growing the business by entering this new market. Let's say I was going to open up a new region in Lancashire for the sake of argument, but I'm not going to do that now. What we need to do is associate not changing, lots of pain, but doing that, lots of pleasure. So when we've done this before, a lady came to me a couple of months ago and she said, I can't stop eating chocolate. I said, well, I don't know why you're coming to me, but she said, well, you do some of this mindset stuff. So how can you help me from stop eating chocolate? So I said, well, tell me, when you eat that chocolate, what do you get? And she said, oh, I love chocolate. It's joy I get pleasure. I get all sorts of pleasure from eating chocolate. I love it. It's the most pleasurable thing. It's gorgeous. So, okay. I said, well, what we've got here is we've got a bit of a challenge here because I need to get the amount of pain more than that pleasure you've just been describing. And the way I did it, or the only way I could do it, was to associate eating chocolate with something that just gave a lot of pain, a lot of horribleness. So rightly or wrongly, I chose tuna casserole. So what I was doing with her was saying, okay, think chocolate, bang, think tuna casserole, chocolate, tuna casserole, chocolate, tuna casserole, chocolate, tuna casserole. Think about that taste, the chocolate and the tuna casserole in the same mouth. Oh, get it in your gut. Don't just intellectually get it. Get it in your gut. How awful will that taste be? And every time you see that chocolate, I want you to see tuna casserole. I want you to get that taste in your mouth. And that's how we drove it there. That's how we make it work in some situations. With Sarah, the challenge, and this was her sort of what she wrote out on the piece of paper in front of her, pivoting the business, question mark. So I got her to write out the pleasure and the pain associated with pivoting the business. And I got her to think about it down the left-hand sort of vertical of doing it or not doing it. So we've got pleasure of not doing it. Well, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can spend more time with my family. Or the pleasure of doing it, sense of achievement, keeping the money coming in, helping my clients, etc. And then I got her to jot down some ideas around pain. What's the pain of not doing it, not quitting, not pivoting the business? Well, feeling like a quitter, no money, etc. What about the pain of doing it? Well, long hours, certainly, maybe feeling useless if it fails, etc. And then what you can see there, what I managed to do to make the decision and to push forward was to give massive, I guess, immediate, unbearable amount of pain of not doing it. So you'll see there's an extra bullet point in the top right. And there's also a few extra bullet points in the bottom left. So I also managed to say that to make it to build up the pleasure of doing it. So massive, immediate, loads of pleasure from doing it. And that helped her come to a better decision around taking it forward, a braver decision. So what I thought we'd do is maybe just have yourself, just if you've got a piece of paper in front of you or a notepad and a pen, just write pleasure and pain along the top, along the horizontal, and doing it and not doing it in the same way that I've done there on the left-hand side, vertical. And then just think about a decision that maybe you've been procrastinating about, or a decision that, or something you want to do, like grow the business, but you're not sure whether you should or not. And let's just think about, well, top right, what's the pain of not doing it? Think about it. What would you feel like? What would happen if you didn't do it? What the pain that you'd get? What might you miss out on? And then bottom left, doing it. What pleasure would it give you if doing that particular thing? Helping people, growing more profitably, getting more independence, more financial freedom, whatever it might be, making your family proud, whatever it might be. And let's just think about the pain and pleasure. I mean, if we had more time, we could fill out the whole box, but we haven't. But think about the pain-pleasure dynamic, because that's one of the things that sort of really drives us. And we know that that's one of the things there. So anybody got any questions or comments, or James, anything through, or anything that we normally get at this stage that from other groups?
Nothing's come through, but I think it's this is the model I quite like, being able to kind of think about my tasks as what I've got to do, the pleasure and the pain. And I use this quite a bit just to just kind of really, reassess, what I really need to do, put the priorities on.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing.
I think it's good.
So go on.
Got one comment. I mean, I think this is good. It's a good sort of means of sort of channeling your thoughts. The only thing I thought was it's quite easy just to give up and not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So that's a bit of a, which I suppose. Well, I suppose then the pain of not doing it is it's a cop out, isn't it? And you live it. It's being able to live with that going downstream, I reckon. You're
absolutely right. And when I talk about associating to it, as I say, with the tuna example, it's not just a case of intellectually saying, oh, well, I'll be a bit disappointed in myself. It's getting that association stronger, more unbearable, more immediate. So, I'll be embarrassed, the fact that I've committed to doing this and now I'm not going to do it. I'll feel stupid in front of my friends. I'll feel like a quitter. It's getting that real gut association rather than the sort of I guess, theoretical, intellectual sort of thing, because that's the thing that's going to drive you.
Yeah, but I guess it's making sure that those emotions are valid and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They've got
true,
to be valid. Yeah,
and you're not kidding yourself. And
no.
because sometimes packing it in is the right answer. If you're in a no hope business which isn't going anywhere, maybe the best thing is to do something different.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine. I think what we find that where this tool would come in is the decision about, should I do something different, and with pleasure and pain that. But like you say, what we don't do is just say, well, I'll just do nothing. It's like, where Loose Women isn't going to watch itself at whenever time that's on. I'll just do nothing. I'll just sit on the telly and, So yeah, using it to move us forward, whatever that might be. But it's a big decision. So it helps with that.
I think sometimes as well, it's for me, it helps me rebalance. Like if I'm not doing this and it's a pain, I need to start thinking about not doing it and the pleasure it gives me. Just kind of putting a different perspective on it as well.
I think you're right. And I think the trick here, if I'm honest, is in my experience anyway, people are more motivated by pain than they are of pleasure. So if I want to try and influence someone to really, or myself to really do something, and it's a bit imbalanced, then I know that if I put more pain into it, that if it's a zero-sum game, more pain will motivate me generally more than more pleasure. So look at the pain of not doing it can also be a way of doing it. So yeah, but like you say, James, I think one of the things that we're seeing coming out a lot more is in order to keep people in the right mood and the right mindset, gratitude is a really important thing at the moment. Being grateful for what you've got. Many of us have got a job, or many of us are running a business, or we haven't gone bankrupt and we've got health at the moment and we've got a family. All those things about the gratitude are really important motivators at the moment. I know some people who every morning do a little gratitude session with themselves. They sort of say, this is what's gone well. This is what I've got. I need to, all the pain and all the problem that are happening, think about what you've got. So yeah, it's an interesting one. So we talked there about pain and pleasure. So the fourth area that I took Sarah through is to actually try and change that self-limiting belief. And this is a webinar in itself, but ultimately with Sarah, when we talked about it, the limiting belief she had was that she didn't believe she was good enough to pivot the business. So what we did there was, first of all, I tried to change that belief because until I could change that belief, I knew that the actions weren't going to be there, the behaviors, the decisions, none of that would happen unless we change this belief. So first thing I did was do exactly what we talked about, which is about doing pain pleasure exercises and massively associating pain to not doing it. Second thing we did was also challenge the reference for that belief. So in this case, it was her father that said she wasn't good enough. He said that he wouldn't give her a penny towards a university education because she wasn't bright enough. So we challenged the reference that had started that belief off in her head many years ago. And, without going over the board, what I said to her was, Sarah, where did this belief come from? We talked about belief, a feeling of certainty about what something means. She was certain she wasn't good enough. So I said, well, where did that come from? And she talked about her father had said it and that he wasn't good enough. And so I said, well, let's just unpack that a bit. Did your dad grow a business? No, he worked in a factory. Okay. Does he have any experience did any of his friends grow a business and have the sort of challenge that you've had? No. Okay. So maybe he's not the best reference for it. So we tried to knock away some of that references. Next thing we did, we talked about declaration, getting her to tell herself that she didn't believe it anymore, following that up with imagining that what her life would be like. It was like removing a millstone around her neck if she didn't have this limiting belief, forcing her to act in the way that she did. Fifth area, we tried to replace that belief with a new, better belief. If you just take out a belief, often habitually you'll go back to it. So what you've got to do is actually replace it with another one and find evidence that in Sarah's case, it wasn't such a bad thing because she'd already grown her business once. So we could find that she could grow it again. And the seventh area we did was just test her. So every now and then, giving her a call saying, no, do you still believe that you're good enough? And how do you know that? Well, this week I did X and I did that, I did this. Okay. So we're sure that it's embedded. So changing beliefs, a big topic in its own right, but it is definitely worth doing because we know that if we change the beliefs, we change the actions. If we change the actions, we change the results. The final fifth area is about references, as we said earlier. And I guess when we're looking and evaluating a situation or thinking about making a decision, I guess for many of us, we use references as well. So we think, well, you know, I mean, let's say, for example, you're thinking of your business. So if I asked you now, what do you want your business to grow to in, say, 3 years' time? Is it a £5 million business or a 10 million or a 20 or a £100 million business? Probably what would happen in your mind is you'd probably think, well, who else has done like a £50 million business? I don't know anybody, so it's not that. Who else has done a £10 million? Oh, maybe I know that one. How do I compare to them? Have I ever done anything like a £10 million business? Wow. So it's all this referencing. And not only referencing yourself, but referencing other people. What I know is that you end up becoming the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So let me say that again. You become the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. Now for me, particularly over the last few months, I think one of those people has probably been my cat. So I'm not quite sure what that says. But who's that for you? Because what I'm saying is that if you want to get better results, and you know that you need to do that, but you also know that results just don't come on their own. They're driven by actions and decisions, which are driven by beliefs and references. So if you want to work on that cause and effect, you've got to get better references. You've got to hang out with more successful people. You've got to hang out with and work and talk and speak with fast growth businesses or funders or people who've done it before, so you can model their success. So references really important as well. And this is what Sarah wrote down. I challenged her on this. And so after a session on references and belief systems, one of the things that I said, well, okay, what's your action list then? So she said, okay, well, I'm going to reread the pivoting articles you sent to me, see if I can do that. So I can take some reference there. That'll help build belief. She said, I'm going to take on board what you're saying about modeling successful people. So there was actually an events management business leader in Stoke that she knew had already shifted the business online. So she said she was going to ring him up and ask him if she could model some of the approaches that he'd done. She was going to watch one of my webinars. But interesting, the fourth one, again, going back to, let's not talk about all the things you can't do because of COVID or you can't do because of all this. Think about what you can do. So the fourth one, she said, she's going to create online her own female COVID-19 mastermind group. And the interesting thing there, she said, every one of those women that I invite will be more successful than me, so I can model them. I said, that's fantastic. And finally, she's going to get a growth coach from the local enterprise partnership there, the Growth Hub, etc., to challenge her, to ask her the difficult questions, and to make sure those belief systems were sticking. So I thought what we'd do is that's kind of like the end of that 5 session. So what I thought we'd do is just maybe test what you've learned. And let's just run through this as a bit of an example of how the mind works, how we evaluate and work out decisions. So what I'd like to do is think about these next questions, and we'll if you're prepared to, let's participate in the chat by doing this. So the first question I want you to think about is, if you could earn £100 for the NHS key workers by eating a bowl full of live cockroaches, would you? Why? Or why not? So in your answer, you want to say yes or no. Yes, I would because, or maybe a question to clarify. Or maybe you might say, no, I wouldn't because, maybe a question. So just start putting those. We're not going to judge, don't worry. You'll be surprised. I've heard lots of different answers on this. So just try and tap that into the text side of things on your on the screen. And then second question, just to keep us sort of on our toes. If you could cure the world of COVID-19 today by killing one innocent person, would you? Why? Or why not? And again, the answer there is yes, because or maybe it might be a question you would want to ask me, or no, because of and a question you might want to ask me. And as I say, the reason for just being sort of these provocative questions, again, I just want to demonstrate how it works, how these 5 things come together. So, have we got any answers in yet, James, in terms of earning £100?
Well, we have. I upped mine from £1,000 this morning to £10,000, maybe, a bowl of cockroaches.
So what's interesting there is what you're doing there is the pain pleasure thing. So you're increasing the pleasure. The £100 has gone to £1,000, £10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So you're actually moving the pleasure thing there. So that's the one, number 3 you're working on there. Yeah. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Someone said that no, because there are other ways of doing it, of raising money.
Yeah. So the interesting thing there, where I'm going there, is references. So that person probably went through all 5 of these subconsciously very quickly to a greater or lesser extent, but there they're going to references. What else? Who else has done this? What else could we do in this situation? Yeah.
No, would have to be much more. £100 isn't going to make a difference.
Yeah. So pain, pleasure, I think there in terms of that.
No, because I don't eat live animals.
Yeah, so there's a belief system there. Number 4, I see come into play there. Don't eat live animals. That's my belief system. So we went to number 4 there to make that decision. Yeah.
And then on question 2, yes.
Just on one.
Sorry.
Just on one. The other ones we get on that are things like, so if we took...
We've had salad cream, haven't we?
Salad cream. It depends. Maybe that's putting them in a state, as in number 1. Sometimes we get number 2, which is your questions. So somebody's answer to, would you eat for £100, would you eat the bowl full of live cockroaches? Sometimes people come back and say, how many cockroaches are in a bowl? Or the one we had recently was references was no, because I've seen I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and it sounds awful, the noise of actually hearing that. So yeah, it's but everybody goes through those 5 to a greater or lesser extent, but probably one of them is more predominant as to why they came to the decision. So question number 2, James.
Yeah, there was 2 comments, and it was a split. Yes, one is to save more, many more, absolute no-brainer. And then another no, because there are other ways of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So again, references, and also in terms of beliefs, should one person sacrifice for the betterment of the world, you might have a belief that that's the way to do it. Somebody this morning had a belief around Jesus Christ and said, well, yeah, not only was that a belief thing that he saved the world for his own life or something, and references, that was a reference as well. Pain, pleasure.
I think other people went to themselves, didn't they, as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. We had one person 2 weeks ago who said, yeah, I'd have to kill one person, but it'd be me. And interesting, she said, and I'd have to be in a state to do it, which I thought was very good, actually. Yeah.
Maybe it was after eating a bowl of cockroaches.
Yeah, exactly. She got the whole hog. Yeah. So getting yourself in the right state, asking yourself the right questions, good questions, getting the association, pain and pleasure right, getting the beliefs right, getting your references right, all come together to help you evaluate the situation, evaluate the decision, and help you move forward and help you grow the business. So I guess just on the sort of the final sort of slide, really, I hope what we've achieved today is really developed your awareness as to why you make the decisions you do, and to challenge you on making bigger decisions about your growth of your business going forward. But also to raise that awareness of how and why you make some of the decisions you do, what's going on unconsciously inside your head. I think it was Carl Jung, the philosopher, that said, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, then it will drive and direct our lives, and we will call it fate. So what he was saying was all those times where people say to you, well, I grew a business, but it didn't quite work right. One of those things, you know, COVID or stuff happens, you know, that's the way it is. Well, often it's not quite about chance. It's about actually the subconscious things that are going on in your head. And we know that success leaves clues. So we model ourselves on the most successful people. And if we don't know those, then we go out there and take control and we try and model some people. We know we've got to think and invest in ourselves. So deductively and inductively, for me, you know, if there's good coaches available or good one-to-ones available through the business advisors at Humber, then get yourself a coach. You know, they're the best thing to challenge you on your questions. Think about your mindset, cause and effect. You know, every time you think about a decision that you're making, a big decision, just try and think about the belief system that's sponsoring that. All of us have an ancestry in our decision making. And until actually, you know, some people talk about behaviours. You can't change your behaviour until you've changed the belief that's sponsoring it. It's an interesting topic. And the other thing as well is three that we think about, people who are successful, they believe they're creator, they think big, they think potential. Then finally, we talked about getting the right state, your questions, your associations, your beliefs and your references. And if we can do all these things, then that hopefully will allow us to make the right thinking. And if we get the right thinking, we do the right behaviours, we make the right decisions, and we get the right results. And I guess just to sort of finish off with, if you like, the Sarah story, one of the last conversations I had for her was, I said to her, well, you know, this is great. Everything's going well. She'd actually started to grow the business back up. She got some virtual events on. Things were going very well. And I said, that's absolutely great. You know, fantastic. Really pleased for you, Sarah. Fantastic. And I said, the sky's the limit. And she picked me up on that belief system. And she said, well, don't tell me the sky's the limit when the footsteps on the moon. I thought I'd leave you with that. I said, I'm going to take that one to the next webinar. It's a brilliant quote. So I have. I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you got something from it. And I'll pass back over to James for the Q&A.
Thanks, Steve. I didn't know whether we were going to be doing the mood question again.
Well, yeah. Who knows?
Where are we at the moment? But no, thank you for coming along to today's session. Hope you've enjoyed it and you've got a lot of value from today's session. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. If you do want any additional support, the Grow My SME scheme run by the Humber Business Growth Hub, there are a load of support out there with them. There's 20 plus advisors that, you know, Steve kind of alluded to about getting a coach, a mentor, someone that you can talk to, but they can also help you through a number of the programs that are running. There's the likes of the supply chain, digital catalyst, and a really good one that I know of because we deliver it is the business scale up program for businesses of 10 plus employees. But yeah, have a look on the Grow My SME website if you want to find out more about what's available in the area. Steve, can you just move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Just to give you an overview, there will be a lot more webinars that are added, but just to kind of give Steve will be back next week if you're wanting to join us around a team that executes every time. And Steve, do you want to say a few words about that session and what it's going to entail?
Yeah, I suppose for me, what we're finding is that, you know, strategy is great, but again, the successful leaders, good ideas and good strategies are pretty common. The real difference is those that execute on them. So those that can make a bridge between a really good strategy and a plan to actually execution. So one of the things we talk about is moving from strategic intent into an operational reality. And we've got some disciplines and some tools and techniques that help teams do that. And I think it's particularly important if you're looking for investment. A lot of investors will say, it's a bit of a phrase that a lot of investors use is that they say, give me a grade A team and a grade C plan every time over a grade A plan and a grade C team. Because what they know is they've seen plenty of good business plans, but they haven't turned out to anything because, again, it's the people, the potential within the people that makes a difference. So yeah, we got 4 disciplines of how we find that good teams or good leaders manage that execution phase.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. And then if there's one final slide, I think there might be. Yeah, no, just thank you for attending. We will open the floor to open the floor. If anyone's got any questions for Steve or any final questions for Steve before we bring this session to a close.
No.
Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along. We'll bring it to a close today, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.